Would you hear a wild tale of adventure, of a hero who tackled the sea, a superman swimming the ocean? Then hark to the tale of Joe Lee. Our channel, our own Straits of Dover, had been swum by an alien lot. Our British-born swimmers had tried it, but that was as far as they'd got. So great was the outcry in England darts, players neglected their beer, and the Chancellor proclaimed from the woolsack as Joe Lee were the chap for this here. For in swimming baths all round the country, Joe were noted for daring and strength. Quite often he dived in the deep end and thought nothing of swimming a length. So they wrote him, care of workhouse master, Joe was spending the summer with him, and promised him 2 Christmas puddings if over the channel he'd swim. Well, Joe jumped into the breach like an hero. He said, all their fears I'll relieve, and it isn't their puddings I'm after, as I told 'em last Christmas Eve. Though many have tackled the channel, from Grisnez to Dover, that is, for the honour and glory of England, I'll swim from Dover to Grisnez. Well, as soon as his words were made public, the newspapers gathered around and offered to give him a pension if he lost both his legs and got drowned. Well, he borrowed a tug from the Navy to swim in the shelter of lee. The wireless folk lent him a wavelength, and the waterboard lent him the sea. His wife strapped a mascot around him. The tears to his eyes gently stole. 'Twas some guiness corks she'd collected and stitched to an old camisole. Well, he entered the water at daybreak. A man with a camera stood near. He said, hurry up and get in, lad. You're spoiling my view of the pier. At last he were swimming, with a beautiful overarm stroke, when the men on the tug saw with horror that the rope he were tied to had broke. And down came a fog thick as treacle. The tug looked so distant and dim. A voice shouted, help, I am drowning. Joe listened and found it were him. But the tug circled round till they found him. They hauled him aboard like a sack, tied a new tow rope around him, smacked him, and then threw him back. 'Twere at sunset, or just a bit later, that he realised all wasn't right, for the tow rope were trailing behind him, and the noose round his waist getting tight. One hasty glance over his shoulder, he saw in a flash what were wrong. The captain had shut off his engine, and Joe was towing the tugboat along. On and on through the darkness he paddled, till he knew he were very near in, well, by the way he kept bumping the bottom and hitting the stones with his chin. Was it Grisnez he'd reached? No, it wasn't. The treacherous tide in its track had carried him halfway to Blackpool, and he had to walk all the way back.